Hello, Anandi. Thank you so much for spending the next 20 minutes with me. How are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. I'm delighted to be here with you. Great stuff.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, I've been doing these interviews for a year now. I haven't done many interviews, but I enjoy to pick those entrepreneurs that are doing something different in the world and for society. And I believe that you caught my eye, and I'd like to expand on what you do and how you can possibly help with a bunch of tips, how you can help business leaders and entrepreneurs in this time of crisis.
Yes. Sorry, I'll just make sure my phone's on silent.
Great. Okay, excellent. So before we start properly, I just want to get this right. You are an international sleep specialist. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Excellent. And so this is fantastic because I've actually never came across someone who's a sleep specialist. How did you become one?
Well, it all started when I was about 27, when I actually started suffering from chronic insomnia. And it went on and on and on for years.
Oh my God.
And years and years, like 12 years, 13 years, 14 years, just went on and on. And I didn't want to take pills. I did try a sleeping pill. My mother gave me one of hers, and I just felt worse the next day. And I thought, this is just not my kind of like not my street or not my road. This is not what I want to be doing. So I then I was already teaching fitness at that point, but I just couldn't get over this like whole sleeplessness thing. It was triggered by a couple of like life events, which often it is, and it gets triggered, and then you just can't seem to turn it back on again. You can't seem to get into the rhythm again. So I basically went off I was doing yoga, but I was feeling that I wasn't getting what I was looking for out of it. So I just decided to just drop the tools down and just go to India. And I went to India and lived in an ashram for a while. And I was introduced to the breathing. I was on a training. And my teacher at that time, he knew I was suffering from insomnia. And when I was leaving, he was saying, I want you to go home and do this, go home and do 20 minutes of this type of breathing, building up to 40 minutes. And during all that time, I was learning also about Ayurveda and mindfulness and meditation and everything. And I basically realized that you have to do certain things in a certain order, because a lot of the time, and I did it as well, I was sort of stabbing around in the dark, trying a bit of this, a bit of that, and nothing really works in isolation. It kind of works it's very much of a holistic thing. And you have to really start with the mind. And basically, I realized that actually, that's really my path. That's what I need to be doing, because there are so many, more than a third of the population who suffer from sleep issues. There's 10 million sleep prescriptions in the UK going out every single year. And that's a lot. And it's not necessarily, I'm sure some people need that, but most of the time it will be an imbalance. And I just kind of like gone on to that because it's a personal story of mine, and I can relate to people who have suffered or are suffering from chronic insomnia, which is really why I do what I do.
Wow. It must have been so frustrating.
And it was hell, it's so difficult to focus, you just feel so awful,
Absolutely, yeah.
To say brain fog is like an understatement. It's an understatement actually to say brain fog, because you actually feel like you want to die. You feel like you just want the ground to open up and swallow you up, because you cannot face the day. You can't get through the day.
Of course,
you can't things, if you're, and I was teaching at the time, and it was difficult. I had to sort of like stand in front of people, and inside I was crumbling, and outside I was thinking, a bit of lippy will be fine. And I did get through it, but it was really, really hard. And I'm relating to all these people who, are running businesses, who, are trying to get on in the world. And if they're not sleeping, it ruins the day. So yeah.
Yes, I can relate to it to a point, and then we'll come to my sleeping patterns later on. But before that, you mentioned something very important. So I work with a lot. I work a lot with business leaders, entrepreneurs, and since this pandemic started, a lot of my clients are saying, I can't sleep very well, I'm very stressed, of course, because I can understand what they are going through, and I can understand that being under a crisis, it means taking very tough decisions, letting people go, and anxiety and work stress and isolation in this case. And the little I know about sleepology is that, as you said earlier, you touched a very good point. If you don't sleep well, you don't have a good day. Is that correct?
No. The quality of your day depends on the quality of your night. And that's...
Oh, it's the other way around.
Yeah, the quality of your day does depend on the quality of your night. So if you have a rubbish night, then the quality of your day will be rubbish. And if you have a good night, a good quality sleep, then the quality of your day will reflect the quality of your sleep, without doubt.
Wow. Oh my God. So, I believe I sleep well. I feel that I need to sleep 7 to 8 hours. Otherwise I feel very tired, and I feel very unfocused, and I can, I feel distracted, and all these feelings. And we hear things such as successful people don't sleep much, or they get up very early in the morning, for example, 5 a.m., or they sleep an average of 5 to 6 hours a day. Do you think that success, it depends on the quantity or the quality of our sleep?
Well, most people need about 7 or 8 hours. Now, I know that lots of other people, other sleep experts, and I've done a lot of research on this. And the scientific research, and if you speak to neurologists, they will let you know that there's only a very small percentage of the population, I think it's about 3 or 4%, there's something in their DNA that allows them to actually, their brain to kind of like cleanse and their body to recover in like 4 hours. But most people, anyone who brags that they only need 4 hours, well, it's such a tiny amount of the population. Right. And if they say, oh, I'm good on 6, and I'm like, well, I wonder how good you'd be if you were on 7. And yes, I know people, they say they're all right on 6. Some people say they're all right on 6. But I reckon if they were having 7 hours, they would be on really top form. I get up early every day. I get up at 5:30 every day, but I'm in bed early. And then, if it's weekends, of course, I might have a bit of a later night, but, at the moment we're not going anywhere. No one's going anywhere. So early night is every night. But I think to be successful, you need your sleep, unless you're that small amount of the population that say that they can manage on 4, and that's very, very small, and it's hardly anyone. And if you've got a high powered job, you need your wits about you, you need to have a clear mind, then sleep is fundamental. A lot of people, are so paranoid about what they're eating. And I think, you need to eat the right things. Absolutely. But then, they should be more paranoid about sleep. It's like water, sleep, then food. That's the order of importance, because, your brain is not recovering, when you're during the day, when you're awake, your brain is actually getting sort of like low level damage. It's a low level damage. So when you're sleeping, your brain is repairing, this sort of build up of proteins, they're draining out, and your memories are getting organized. So, during the day, it's like, I was kind of liken it to a bit of like a rubbish bin. During the day, you start in the morning and it's empty, and then, you start filling up. And then by the end of the day, it's sort of full. And then at night, it's sort of cleansed. So the cleaners come in and they empty the bin. And so in the morning, it's nice and open and fresh. And that's similar type of thing to brain, all the things that you're doing and seeing and thinking. Then you've got to kind of like process it all, because that's a lot of stuff going on every day. Things that you've seen, things that you've heard, things that you're working on, the projects and the thinking power. Right. You've got to put that energy back in, and sleep is absolutely fundamental to your success. It really, really is.
Oh, I'm glad you're saying this, because a lot of people have been questioning this, you know. When I quit my job a few years ago, I decided to go on a sabbatical year. And I decided to start from Thailand, where I did my first meditation retreat. And so I was basically taught how to breathe properly. And as you know, meditation, as you mentioned earlier, is a lot to do with our breath and breathing. What do you think the breath has to do with your sleep, with our sleep? Do you think it can impact our sleep somehow?
Yeah, well, basically, your breath is intimately connected to your nervous system. And there's research, I think it was like 3 years ago it came out, there was a research that came out that proved that your brain is spying on the breath. So the moment the breathing pattern changes, it informs like the nervous system. So if you're actually breathing in quite a shallow kind of way with not much three-dimensional movement, then that shallow breathing reflects the state of the nervous system, the fight or flight. So that slightly stressed state of the nervous system. So when you're breathing shallowly, the brain is kind of acknowledging, oh, right, you know, that we've got to kind of keep this all going. So the adrenaline's going, you know, the blood's sort of like, you know, going out into the extremities, you know, the heart rate's going up. And the moment that you change your breathing pattern, then if you extend the breath, you lengthen the breath, especially the exhale, then the brain kind of goes, right, okay, we can now calm everything down, everything, it's all right now. So then if your nervous system is calm, then you will sleep better. You cannot sleep when your nervous system is in sympathetic, that's the fight or flight. You will not go into a deep sleep, you won't sleep very well. But you can change the state of your nervous system by changing the breathing pattern. And that is, you know, a big part of my mind principle of sleepology. There's a number of principles, but actually using the breath and learning how to use the breath and learning why the breathing is shallow anatomically as well, because, you know, it's absolutely magic, the breath, and it's free to everyone on the planet. There's no gym membership. It's free. You know, if you knew it was free and you knew that you could actually get clarity in the mind, you can get oxygen, you can get your brain oxygenated, you know, it's a no-brainer, you know, to actually learn how to use the breath, how to use the different breathing patterns, you know, the holding the breath, you know, the faster breathing, kind of like all those breathing techniques, you know, to flush the brain, you know, like holding the breath, for example, you know, like the holding the ancient yogic practice of Kumbhak, which is holding the breath, you know, inhale, you know, in and out. You know, when you hold the breath, the brain goes, oh my God, we need energy, we need oxygen. So oxygen's going up to the brain. So you're getting this incredible kind of cleanse and oxygenation of the brain cells. And of course, when there's more oxygen in the brain, when the brain is you know, fed, then the mind is quieter. It just makes perfect sense, and it's something that everyone could do. You don't need stretchy yoga pants. You don't need to stand on your head for it. You can just do it. You just need a teacher to, you know, coach you through various techniques and things. Not something you can do completely on your own, but it's a very, very valid practice for, you know, helping you calm the nervous system in order for you to be able to go into a deep sleep. It gets very stressful because your brain, when you're in beta, like busy, it's very much connected to the ego side of your, you know, psyche.
Wow.
So it's connected to fear. You know, you're judging, you're criticizing, you know, it's keeping you small. You know, that is very much sort of like, because the ego is designed very much, you know, in nature to protect the physical being, to protect you, to stop you from going into danger, to stop things coming into your space that might hurt you. So the ego is a very, very important thing. But because of our lifestyle and the fact that we don't kind of like go into the quiet spaces, we're just busy from the moment we get up. The first thing you get up, well, I don't, but people just have their phones as their alarm, and it goes off and they're checking their Facebook thing and checking email before they've even actually woken up properly. So they're keeping going in that mode all day long, and they're still doing it at sort of 10 o'clock at night. Therefore, the brain is kind of running, and it gets very much connected. It's constricting. The ego is very constricting. Whereas if you're kind of doing some meditative type thing, breathing, and you're kind of bringing your brain down from the beta to the alpha, that is much more connected to the part of you that's wise, the part of you that knows. You know, that gut feeling that you have, you know, that thing, it doesn't actually come from the brain, it comes from the gut. You know, you think, actually, I know that this is wrong or this is right, you know, and you've got to have the courage to actually follow that feeling. Yeah. But then often the ego takes over and goes, no, you can't do that. Oh, no, it's scary, or, you know, and so, you know, that kind of state, being in that state, that fearful state, that judging state, that ego state the whole time, you know, you're not going to sleep very well. You're going to, you know, struggle to have good quality sleep, continuous good quality sleep all night.
Wow. So it sounds like there is a lot of psychology and science behind it, right?
A lot. There's a lot, yes.
So you mentioned earlier about, you know, as soon as we wake up, we touch our phone and we log on Facebook and social media and etc. Do you think the way we wake up in the morning and the way we start our first hour, for example, affects the way then we have our sleep at night?
Very, very much so. I always say that actually spending the first half hour with the spirit, or the first half hour with the divine, or the first, whatever you want, however you want to describe that, when you kind of nourish yourself with that, or give yourself the gift of having the first, you know, half hour or 1 hour, whatever it is for everyone, depending on the schedule, it's like you're stepping over the threshold of the day from a state of being nourished and a peaceful state. Otherwise, you kind of like, your eyes wake up and the alarm goes off, and immediately you're kind of like, it's a bit of like a bad, it's like a sandstorm in the mind. It's like, you know, the brain has just come out of sleep, and then it's sort of being pulled into the technology, and it's like a sort of a terrible sandstorm in the mind. And of course, you know, that is not very healthy, and it's not very good for the mind. It's not very mindful of the health of the brain, I think.
Yeah,
I think
it makes sense.
It makes sense. I mean, we're mindful of, like, we're having juices and we're doing vegan diets and we're doing green juice or whatever it is. And we're looking after a physical body, but you have to look after your mind and your brain and your emotions as well.
Totally with you. So this is so interesting, and it relates with me to a lot, actually, because my struggle has always been getting out of bed. So I'm okay getting up, I'm okay waking up earlier, but getting out of that bed, that step out, has always been a struggle. But I am training myself to be a morning person and to try to get up earlier, and to have a morning routine, which I believe is important. So I recently read Miracle Morning. It's a book that I highly recommend. I'm sure you read it.
Yes.
And so I've started with my morning routine, and I love it. You know, I've been loving it, and I look forward to it, actually. And I've included, as you mentioned, yoga earlier, I've included 15 minutes of sun salutations, so of yoga exercise. Yeah. Do you think that yoga, good yoga exercise during the day, impacts our sleep, and how?
Yeah, I mean, yoga practice is it's kind of like a broad subject. It depends sort of like what type of yoga practice people do, but certainly for example, the sun salutation is just such a great way to start your day. You know, you're warming up the spine, you're opening up, you know, you're kind of like giving the internal organs a nice massage. If you do it with the breath, the mindful breath, you know, it's like a mindfulness exercise. Opening and stretching the body is really good. You know, the energy channels is really good. So yoga's incredible. Yoga's incredible for the body and the mind. If it's combined with the breathing, if it's combined with some sort of philosophical, mindful content, you know, it's such a broad subject. I think that, you know, yoga is just the best thing since sliced bread, actually, for for everything. I used to pound the gym, and I used to, when I was actually, when I was 27, I was an aerobics teacher, and I used to be doing step Reebok and all that stuff, pounding away. And then I used to think, I've got to sweat and I've got to pound, and but I've learned over the years that I'm fitter now than I've ever been, because I have a yoga a proper, like I have a 2-hour practice in the morning.
Wow.
So that's meditation. I sit for meditation for 40 minutes. I think that's including some breath work. Then I do some posture. Then I do some other breath work. And that just sets me up for my day. I walk around feeling strong. And that physical feeling of feeling strong will reflect in the mind. If your body is not feeling good, if you're feeling sort of flabby and a bit, like stiff, the health of your body is reflected in the mind and vice versa. So keeping the energy channels moving in the body, keeping the mind clear with the breathing, the circulatory channels going. It's all great stuff.
That's beautiful. Yes, I feel so. Since I started my miracle morning, and I'm doing my breath work, so my meditation and my yoga, and then I have other exercises to do as well, mind and body. I feel much energized during the day. I feel more focused, and I feel stronger, as you said, like mentally and physically. Is a stronger feeling that I have, and that reflects on the work I do. So it feels great, actually.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, definitely. And the stronger and healthier you feel, the better you start your day in the morning, the better day you'll have. If you sleep well. And then one of the things you were saying about getting up, having difficulty getting up, I'm not quite sure what time you go to bed, but one of the things, the good habit to get into is not do the snooze button. I don't know if you have the snooze, the snooze, when your alarm goes off and you press the snooze and you can press it again and press it again. Actually, that's not that great for the nervous system, because what happens is you kind of like, go off again, and then you get kind of jumped out of the sort of going back to sleep. So if you can get yourself into a habit of turning the alarm off and then just getting up and sitting on the side of the bed straight away, it's hard to do to start with, but once you get into the habit, you'll feel better, because what happens is you sort of like start going back to sleep, and you sort of feel even tireder when you get up. And also, if you go to bed at the same time every day, get up at the same time every day, your body will get into the rhythm. Your body likes to do certain things at certain times a day. And if your body knows it's going to be asleep by 10 and it's going to be up by 6, you're naturally going to be waking up, and it'll be easier to just turn the alarm off and then just get up and start your day. So,
very true. Very true.
Yeah.
Good. So if we want to wrap this up, and we want to give a bunch of tips to our audience and to whoever want to listen, entrepreneurs, business leaders, and whoever has sleeping issues, how can we summarize it?
Okay, so summarizing it from my sleepology, the principles of sleepology, basically, if you're not sleeping very well, then you have to start with the nervous system, and you have to start with any emotions that you need to deal with, because sometimes emotions keep coming up and you're kind of sitting on a load of pressure cookers and you're just pushing it all down. It's trying to come up and you're pushing it all down, which is creating emotional stress. So you have to kind of deal with that first, and then dealing with digestive issues, even though you might feel you might not have them. But a lot of people that have sleep issues and have stress issues have digestive issues. And a digestive issue and the unhappy nervous system, because you have this sort of like these happy bugs, this microbiome in your gut. And if that's all disturbed, that will also disturb your sleep. There's plenty of research about that. So starting with the nervous system, quietening the mind, making sure you look after your digestion. There's loads to it because I work Ayurvedically, but basically being kind to your digestion. So not eating a heavy meal at 8 o'clock in the evening. We're all on lockdown. We could we can eat more at lunchtime and less in the evening. And if you eat in the evening, eat early, because the body does not want to be digesting food at 8, 9:30 in the evening. That's going to disturb your sleep.
Right.
So emotional system, digestive system, and then consciousness. And that's much more about nourishing the consciousness, because when you're disconnected from your purpose, as you know, I'm sure that's what you're doing a lot of the time with your clients, getting them on their purpose, nourishing their consciousness, having a connection to the spirit, whatever that looks like to you. You know, when you're disconnected, you are much more selfish. You don't really care about the environment, all that stuff. But when you are kind of more nourished and you're more connected to the spirit, you know, you're more compassionate, and that feeds the soul, I always say.
Oh.
So emotional stuff, digestive stuff, and then nourishment. So reading nourishing things, listening to inspiring speakers, so you feel nourished and you can grow. Because if you're not growing or dying, you have to keep growing, learning, growing, so that you can actually be on your own path and be the best version of yourself. That's it, I think. Because when you're not the best expression of yourself, that can keep you awake, because your soul is going, excuse me, you can do better than this. Hello, you're not, you know, you should be doing this. And sometimes these messages are keeping you awake at night.
Absolutely. So, wow, that's so interesting. I'm so into this right now. I don't know, 1st January 2020, I woke up very spiritual. So I'm very into spirituality and soul, mind and body. So that's so interesting, and it's probably a subject that we can extend to another for another interview. Anything else that you want to summarize, or any more tips that you want to give away?
Well, those are the 3 big ones, that if you follow that little formula, the reason that I created Sleepology was to kind of like put it in a process. So the Sleepology has 5 principles. So the first principle is actually digging and finding out why, because there's always a why that you're not sleeping very well. It's not going to be rocket science. There might be some other illness, and there are, but the majority of the time you can start digging and it'll be possibly one of those issues that I've just been talking about. So you're finding out the why, finding out what your constitution needs and what you physically and mentally need, because everyone is different. And then coming up with a program for yourself, starting with that. So you could go, right, well, for the next week, I'm going to focus on, you know, quietening my mind. I'm going to focus on, you know, journaling to get things out. And then the following week, I'm going to really kind of be kind to my digestion. And then the following week, I'm going to dedicate that to, you know, really kind of like finding my purpose and, you know, have a little program. I mean, that's sort of, you know, the Sleepology has, you know, a number of principles, but that's sort of the basic thing. And that's what I do, is I'm coaching people through the process, finding out the root of the issue, and then designing a program bespoke for the person, depending on, you know, what their things are, what's going on with them, and then walking through the program, you know, in a bespoke way. So
that's beautiful. And I'm sure a lot of people will relate to these situations and examples that we've been discussing about now. So before I pressed recording half an hour ago, you mentioned that you do retreats in Italy, right? Tell us about it. And because I'm sure so many people will be interested in your retreats. So many people struggle with getting a good sleep.
Yeah, well, the retreats have always been so beautiful, and I've always had so many beautiful testimonials. Most of the ones I do are in Italy, but obviously, you know, they've all been cancelled right now because of this pandemic. But of course, when it's all over, we will continue. They're usually 4 or 5 nights, and they're in a beautiful location. You know, we have a lovely chef, really healthy food. It's an educational thing. It's not like just a yoga retreat, you know, where you do morning and evening yoga. No, it's a program, you know, so there's lectures, there's theory,
Mm-hmm.
we do objectives, we have sharing, you know, wrapped around obviously morning and evening practices, and they have like workbooks and things to take home, and it's usually really, really lovely.
That's
So
nice.
yeah, I'm hoping that we can kind of get some more dates in the diary again once this is all over. It'll
Yeah,
be
it sounds
lovely.
more like a lifestyle kind of program, right?
Yeah,
Added to the sleepology program as well. So it
yeah,
sounds so interesting and beautiful to add to our learning curve, life learning curve, right? So
yeah.
how can people find you?
Well, they can go to my website, thesleepguru.co.uk, and they'll find me on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram for my sins.
Awesome.
So yeah,
That's great. Great. Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Anandi. You've been
thank
amazing
you.
explaining us the basics and some great tips on sleepology, how to sleep well. And I'm sure lots of people will relate to these issues. And well,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Thank you for having me, Elenia. Thank you so
No
much.
problem.